Back at it again. It's the Football Playbook with your boy RIC in a place to be. Ric Serritella, tell it like it is when it comes to the 13-3 Philadelphia Eagles here on this Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. Happy New Year. We were off yesterday on hiatus, so welcome back to the big show, the global show. Big shout out to all our listeners, all the chat room people. And, we're going to get jump started right into it today. Obviously, developing story. If you were tuned into the Monday Night Football game last night, then you know Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills suffered the cardiac arrest during the game. Very scary moment, just like many of you, just like many of the other hosts' reaction here on the JAKIB Sports YouTube network. Something I've never seen in the great game of football. Obviously a scary moment. And so the football community continues to pour thoughts and prayers to Damar Hamlin, his family. I see the GoFundMe page with his foundation now is up to $3.6 million in donations. So the support continues to pour in, and we'll get into that as the show progresses. We'll keep an eye on the latest news. I know he was in stable condition at last check, so I haven't heard anything since the statement released by the Buffalo Bills that I thought came out this morning. Been a long weekend, been a long day. We'll get into the Eagles. We'll get into the Saints game, which was ugly. We'll look ahead to the Giants game. We'll have Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal coming up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And I know you guys want to get into the Saints reaction. I know you want to get into the coaching game plan and everything else, the injuries, Josh Sweat, Art McNally, by the way, recently inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame this year in 2022. First NFL official passes away on New Year's Day. So we'll get that in as well. But, anytime I get a chance to pop up my paisan, Paul Dottino from Giants.com, I had to do it. Tuesday, as you know, we go behind enemy lines. We bring on the beat reporters. And in my opinion, there's really none better in the business than Paul Dottino. And he joins us now on the Football Playbook. Good morning, Paul. Thank you for your time today. Obviously, a somber moment last night. It's on everybody's mind here in the community. And Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Rick. Obviously what happened last night is something none of us in football have experienced before, unless, of course, you remember the Chuck Hughes incident with the Detroit Lions many years ago, the only NFL player who actually had passed away on the field, and he had suffered a very similar situation. Let's hope that for the Bills' sake and the NFL community, obviously Hamlin first and foremost, that there is a recovery here and that we're able to see him one day walk out and be with the Bills teammates that he so much loves and has a coin toss ceremony. And, bottom line is you just never expect anything like this. And it was certainly very shocking and stirring.
Yeah, I mean, he had to be resuscitated on the field. Very, very frightening moment there. And, of course, Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, very strong ties to the Buffalo Bills organization. I did not see anything issued by the Giants. Have you heard anything in terms of
Daboll? No, the Giants have not issued any statement at all. Several of the former Bills, as you know, guys like Hodgins, Feliciano, or Breida, are all part of the Giants family right now as part of this roster. So there is a very healthy Bills connection. The Giants did not issue any statements last night. But the Giants are off today. I do have some things to tape at the facility. I may run into them. But at this point, I have not seen any reaction other than what has already been on Twitter. And as you probably have seen, everyone from the NFL community from all over the 32 teams and then some have certainly sent their prayers and well wishes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're going to continue to keep an eye on the situation as it develops, and we hope for the best here for Damar Hamlin and his family. Obviously, a lot of these Giants players and coaches, a former teammate of Damar Hamlin, but, they have to focus at the task at hand. It's been a while since the Giants have clinched a playoff spot, Paul, and I hear the celebrations were getting a little bit wild in the locker room on a late night, a toast of the town there in New York City, but it's just remarkable what Brian Daboll has done. I don't think I've spoken to you since the hiring. I know they got the right guy, and this weekend upcoming could determine the Coach of the Year sweepstakes. Now, I think the big question in Philadelphia that everybody wants to know, are the New York Giants going to play their starters? Are they going to rest their starters? Is it going to be a wait-and-see process? I know Daboll came out and initially sounded like that the starters might go, and then he changed his tune and said we do what is best for the team. I think we're just speculating here, but what does your gut tell you, Paul?
Well, Daboll is one of those Belichick disciples who doesn't really like to show his cards, Rick. You understand that. That's the way all those folks are who come from that tree. So he's going to be evasive and general and avoid the question as much as he possibly can. We would hope to find out more in the next 48 hours. But based on what Daboll has done so far in his first season with the Giants, I think what he's going to do, the guys who are healthy, of course, that's in quotations going into the 17th game of the season, but the guys who are healthy outside of Daniel Jones, it would not surprise me if they play a quarter or maybe even a half. But anyone, and I mean anyone, who has got some bumps and bruises and is nicked up or has been dealing with things like a Saquon Barkley, like a Leonard Williams, like a guy like Dexter Lawrence, who's been given load management days off sometimes at practice during the week. I expect all of those guys to be rested on Sunday, to give them a second bye week so that the Giants can have as many of their healthy starters available and as many rehabbing starters available for the first round playoff game. I want you to understand something, Rick, and you and I both know this. There are some teams in the National Football League where the coaches will have more influence on players who are on the medical list than with other teams. The Giants are not that way. They've always been ultra conservative, medically speaking, and they always allow the team doctor to make the final call as to green light or red light for a player. Well, Daboll goes even beyond that. From what I understand over the course of this season, the training staff makes recommendations to Daboll. They don't sometimes even say green light or red light. They say, well, this could be a yellow. He rides with their recommendations. He has been one of the most agreeable, from what I understand, football coaches that a training staff could ever want to work with. He's very quick to take their suggestions, very quick to give players load management days during the week, on Sunday if necessary. And even there are times that he will not, for example, it was so nice in New Jersey last week for the weather, right? They practiced inside. They didn't practice outside before the Colts game. And one would say, why? It's 50-something degrees and sunny outside. Well, the grounds crew said to him, the field, believe it or not, is a bit too hard and a bit too frozen. You're running the risk of injury. He said, I don't want to do that to my players. We're going to practice inside of the field house. He is ultra conservative, and again, takes the trainer's suggestions to heart. With that in mind, I think you will see a lot of the Giants not play against the Eagles.
Interesting stuff. Paul Dottino, Giants.com. Nobody's got their finger on the pulse better when it comes to Big Blue. We're so honored to have him here, getting the 411 behind enemy lines this upcoming week. And I agree. I think the Giants are going to try and rest this team. I think they are banged up. And what you're saying about Daboll, I had known about, he was very into the analytics and data element. So it makes sense that he would kind of be leaning towards this kind of modern mentality when it comes to head coaching. I think Daboll's a pretty young guy, relatively speaking, in terms of head coaching candidates out there. You're seeing the NFL get younger. You're seeing more guys in the front office value data, analytics, leaning on the medical staff. Ric Serritella, I think, has also kind of taken a page from that playbook as well. It's funny.
We understand that the Giants over the last decade have been one of the most, if not the most injured team in the National Football League. Daboll's no fool. He comes in here and he sees that. He knows how badly this year's team has been ravaged with injury. So if he's ever going to err, it's always going to be on the side of the medical staff.
No, and I'm curious, Paul, because if anybody can remember this, it's you. In the past, I can't recall, when the Giants wrapped up a number one seed, but resting starters can go one or two ways. It could be very beneficial. And in the case of a Saquon Barkley, I think, yeah, he could use a week off to regain some strength. In the case of a Daniel Jones, like he's been playing at such a high level and minimizing turnovers and being very efficient. Like you take a week off, you take your foot off the gas pedal, and then, there could be a little rust there. Do you recall Giants teams in the past that have wrapped up the number one seed? Have they rest guys? Has it panned out? Do you think it could backfire? What is the Paul Dottino take on resting versus playing?
You know what, Rick? I don't think the history books are really relevant here because this is a Giants team that has spent so much gas and so much effort and whittled away through so many injuries to get here that guys who are nicked up, let's not kid ourselves. The Giants are going to be an underdog going into the playoffs. They're going to be the number 6 seed. Now, in my perspective of things, I certainly want them to play the number 3 Minnesota Vikings, a team they just gave heck to 2 weeks ago, and I believe outplayed. And if not for some sloppy mistakes, would have won that game. I like their chances in a rematch against the Vikings team right now that has a banged up offensive line. But I do think the national perception is the Giants are going to be heavy underdogs. And with their 9 wins so far this season, 8 of them by 1 score or less will say, well, they're kind of fortunate to be here. They're going to be a one and done team. The Giants are not competing for a number 1 seed. If you're that good, maybe you can look at this thing differently. But the Giants have had to struggle, scratch and claw for everything that they've gotten. And they've got guys whose gas tank is virtually on empty. That makes this situation totally different than anything in the past. And I believe that Daboll needs to be smart and needs to take those warning signs from his training staff and follow them because this team does have a chance in the first round to do some damage. I think they're playing pretty damn good ball over the last 3 weeks of this season. And when you go into the playoffs on a bit of a roll, you absolutely enhance your chances.
No, I would agree. I think the Vikings is a very winnable matchup, and the Giants are playing good ball entering the big dance. So anything's possible once you get there, as you know, Paul. So I guess it will be a lot of Tyrod Taylor. I can't recall seeing him much this year. I know he's banged up earlier in the season. Is it going to, speaking of the Buffalo Bills, will it be Tyrod in there? Or
Yeah, I expect you'll see quite a bit of Tyrod Taylor. I think if Daniel Jones plays a series or two, that would be it. In my book, I think Daboll plays it like he would the last exhibition game, where if you do play your, quote, starters, they're out of there in a hurry. But again, I think any of the guys who the training staff lists as being low on gas, they don't play. Daniel Jones, I will say this. The danger of the rust factor that you alluded to a few minutes ago, I don't think that really is a factor for the Giants because of how focused they are. This is a team that is incredibly consistent and has shown throughout the season in terms of their preparation. And they follow the coach's lead. Daboll says you don't get too high, you don't get too low. You prepare the same way every single day, regardless of the situation and the circumstances. They usually don't tell the players on Thursday at the earliest as to who may or may not be in the lineup. They're a very matchup-oriented team. They don't just keep the same snap counts and same schemes every week. They match up more so than even other teams do, especially on defense. And so they force their guys to be extremely consistent in their prep. I'll give you an example. Daniel Jones spent a full day at work yesterday with his playbook, working on film and working on tape. Now, he probably doesn't know if he's even going to see one snap against the Eagles. But on Monday, he's busting his butt, doing what he's done every single Monday for the entire season, studying up for the game. So is Daniel Jones really going to be lacking focus if he doesn't play a snap against Philly? I don't think so. This guy's got a laser on the heart of the matter. he won't be distracted at all by getting a week off if that's what they decide to do. And I think most of the Giants are the same way.
All right, we're going to continue to see what the Giants decide to do. Eagles fans thought this game was going to be meaningless from a Philadelphia standpoint. Turns out to be a meaningless game from the Giants vantage. I know you're a busy guy, Paul. I got to get you out of here. But one thing I wanted to ask you about was what was your takeaway? Kayvon Thibodeau, who I was very high on when we did our draft coverage back in April. He's been playing well. Obviously, the Nick Foles, we just saw a scary incident with Damar Hamlin, the sack against Nick Foles. I saw Jeff Saturday came out and had some very critical words for Kayvon Thibodeau, the Snow Angel celebration. And I guess he went even further after the play to the sideline and did the night time to Nick Foles. Any takeaways or thoughts there?
I'm going to give you a generic thought because it doesn't just apply to Thibodeau. It applies to all NFL players. I'm an old school guy. I would do away with all the celebrations. Okay? I'm okay with the spike in the end zone. Homer Jones didn't want to get fined for throwing the ball into the stands. So many years ago, Homer Jones invented the spike so that he wouldn't hurt in the pocketbook. And so after he would score a touchdown, he'd spike the ball. You had Elmo Wright, with the crazy crossover at his knees after he scored a touchdown. There have been a few minor celebrations that, in my mind, are okay. But I don't dig all of the choreography. The Radio City Music Hall Rockette celebrations that we are now seeing that are more than one or two players. No, it's the whole team, the whole unit. They got to pose for a picture. They got to make like they're rowing a boat up a stream. I'd get rid of all of it. Jim Brown used to give the ball to the referee after he scored a touchdown and said, make it like you've been there before. Well, that's me. I don't mind a fist pump. I don't mind a guy slapping each other on the butt or a high five or a hug or even a pump fist, to the air because maybe you want to pay tribute to a lost relative or something. Keep the damn thing to a minimum. I'm against 90% of the celebrations on the football field. And that's how I feel about it. This has nothing to do with Thibodeau. Obviously, anything that he did would have been, banned by my old school mentality anyway.
Yeah, I think we're both probably more old school than most there, Paul. I tend to agree with you. I wasn't going to go down that road because I thought, people probably think that I'm outdated, but I agree with you. I'm watching the college football playoffs. I see a guy, he has a pass deflection in the end zone to prevent a touchdown. He's celebrating the dance, the whole 5-minute celebration. Next play, he's giving up a touchdown to lose the game. So I'm with you. I think it's gotten a little bit out of control, too much. And so I know.
It's simple. It's simple, Rick. Keep it to a minimum. If you have a momentary burst of emotion because of a play you made, no one's going to say you have to stand there with your hands by your side and walk to the sideline. We're not saying that. Hell, Phil Simms would throw a touchdown pass and give a fist pump. That's fine. That's minimal. That's a momentary burst of emotion. It's all this choreography that I am totally against.
Yeah, no, I think it's a special teams tackle now we're celebrating. So I think it's getting a little bit too much. But hey, let me ask you this. I'm sorry to keep you so long, but Franco Harris, Fort Dix, New Jersey, the Italian Army. You I know have seen him play. Can you just shed some light on what Franco Harris meant to the NFL legacy? One of the all-time greats.
Well, not just one of the all-time greats in terms of talent and production, but how about one of the all-time greats in terms of being a first-class individual? How about we talk about that for a second? Because there's not a guy outside of Jim Brown who was upset when Franco was attacking his career all-time rushing record who would ever say anything derogatory about Franco Harris. Universally loved for many reasons, not just a class individual, an unselfish individual, and a guy who always put his best foot forward. But, Jim came up with, well, he's always looking to run out of bounds. He's never looking to take that extra hit. He's never looking to lower his shoulder. And Franco's take was, well, durability is more important. Because I know my team needs me the rest of the game. My team needs me next week. They need me the rest of the season. I'm not doing them any good if I'm hurt and I'm not available. And so, I never took Jim Brown's criticism of Franco to have any water or weight. I mean, if it's 3rd and an inch, yeah, you better lower your shoulder to get the first down. But there were many other times that Franco did what was prudent because he knew how valuable he was to his team. Let's face it, until the emergence of Franco Harris, the Steelers weren't rattling off 4 Super Bowl championships in 6 years.
Yeah, so, 1972, that Franco Harris draft, and then 2 years later, they had one of the most historic draft classes of all time.
No doubt.
And they won 4 Super Bowls right there in the 70s on the back of the one, Franco Harris, who was a 1,000-yard rusher as a rookie, and they didn't play as many games back then. And if you take his first 10 years, I mean, you could stack him up against anybody.
Rick, I smile every time I go to the Pittsburgh airport. I during my sportscasting travels, I have to go to Pittsburgh, every year. And every time I see the statue of Franco catching the ball from the Immaculate Reception that is in the Pittsburgh airport, it gives me a good feeling inside because he was a true ambassador for pro football and for the city of Pittsburgh.
One of the all-time greats, as are you, Paul Dottino, one of the all-time greats. By the way, I hope the holidays treated you well. How many meatballs did the Dottino family put down over the past week or two?
I kind of took it a little bit easy. I'm just glad you said all-time greats instead of old-time greats.
Well, hey, Paul, we appreciate all the hard work you've done. And I believe you are the longest tenured New York Giants beat writer, are you not?
Well, I mean, 40 years on the beat. I'm going to do at least 50. And after I do 50, I'll probably want to do at least 10 or 20 more. It's been a blast, Rick. And I the fire burns. I enjoy it. I love what I do. And, when you have these NFC East games, even ones like this Sunday, which probably don't carry a lot of clout, it's still fun.
No, absolutely. And I always love crossing paths with you, seeing you out there, and, of course, listening to you on the NEC Northeast Conference calls as well. I'm sure we'll be talking sooner rather than later, Paul, and thank you so much for checking in on the Football Playbook.
Always good to be with you, Rick, one of the great draft gurus of the National Football League. Stay well.
Thank you so much. That's Paul Dottino, really one of the first-class acts. He talks about Franco Harris being a first-class person. And I agree. That was one of my most enjoyable interviews with Franco Harris and Paul Dottino, a first-class individual in addition to being the best writer on the beat for the New York Giants. Paul, he'll shoot you straight now. He doesn't pull any punches, and that's what I like about him. And he's been around the block, as you can tell, a fountain of knowledge. And I have become a regular, believe it or not, guys, on the Giants.com. When it comes to draft season, of course, we had John Schmelk on a couple weeks ago, and I always hop on with John and Paul. We talk NFL draft, what it all means. And, hey, we got the chat room people out there living it up, getting down on it. We're going to have Martin Frank from the Philadelphia Delaware Journal-News coming up in just a few minutes. Want to give a shout-out to everybody who came out to the Tailgate Takeover on Sunday, by the way. I'll talk more about it later on the show. Philly 559, I see in the chat room. It was good to catch up. Doc, I'm sure he's pulling some teeth right now listening to the show. It was great to see everybody out there. We are going to call out a few individuals who said they were coming and did not show. Oh, Cam's Razor, I'm talking to you. But, hey, appreciate all the comments. Paul Mancini, Davey Boy, Homeowner BBQ, welcome to the show. Listen, I get it with the celebrations. I'm not trying to take the fun out of football. The Nick Foles, after I watched it again, it was a little bit disturbing. Somebody should have did something. And I just think, considering what we saw this week between Damar Hamlin, Nick Foles, some of the stuff we saw with Tua, I mean, let's just make sure the guy's okay before we're over there dancing and celebrating over him. That's all. And, Paul Mancini, born in Fort Dix, New Jersey. Kevin Savard, I see it. James Stella. Jalen Hurts is the MVP. He's proven it by not playing, I think. And, we got a little clean shaven with it. I was out at the tailgate. We were grimy with it. We were getting it in. And I got to thank you, man. I can't tell you what it means to me with some of the compliments you guys paid me at the tailgate takeover. It's been such a humbling experience to listen to the compliments and what this show has become in our 84th edition here on the Football Playbook. And we'll get into some of that later on. Hour 2 of the show. Josh Sweat, yes, absolutely. That was a scary incident, which has kind of been, I don't want to say forgotten, but with the NFL community focused on Damar Hamlin, we are going to continue to monitor the situation. Hopefully we have an update here soon. I see his GoFundMe foundation page. I checked this morning. It had just gone over 3 million. I checked again right before we went on air. It was 3.6 million. So the money and support is flooding in Damar Hamlin's way. Hopefully he pulls through. And just a very scary moment last night. If you did not see it, Monday Night Football, Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin had a cardiac arrest on the field, collapsed, was rushed to the hospital, University of Cincinnati Hospital. We're continuing to monitor the situation. Alexander Freeman, buckle up. All you guys out there in the chat room, get down on it. We've got Eagles talk for the next 90 minutes or so. Appreciate your patience. Paul Dottino, Tuesday. It's typically a day off for the beat writers, so had an opportunity to pop up Paul, and he was worth every second of it. Now, we turn the page back over, focus on the Philadelphia Eagles. Hey, if you watched that game on Sunday, a lot of what we discussed throughout the week last week came true. And I've been listening to the talking heads. I've been listening to all the shows here on the network, the postgame, everything else. Love it. One thing I don't hear enough of, people giving the New Orleans Saints some credit. This is not a bad football team. And I'm going to get into that with Martin Frank, Delaware News Journal, right after the break. Smash that like button, and we'll see you here in 2 minutes.